So you're late again. How do you address it? What do you do? This is a common problem I hear all the time from coaching clients, one that I've confronted so many times in my practice. So, how do you deal with this practical issue? With that, welcome to this episode of Great Practice, Great Life. It's Steve Riley, your host. So, a lot of people struggle with on how to give practical tips in the workplace, navigating expectations, navigating communication, and other fun challenges that you do not anticipate. How do you address issues just like that? Somebody's tardy. How do you address quality control? Like, you've made this mistake 55 times in these documents. No, you don't put a smiley face at the end of an emoji to another lawyer, practical things. And then, of course, there's attire. What does business casual mean anymore? I'm not really sure. And when I was practicing, one of my greatest fears and challenges was giving feedback to a female that I was managing or supervising or working with on what's appropriate and not appropriate to wear to work, So I'm not sure how to help you or help myself. So I brought in an expert. On this particular episode, I brought back Lori Pulvermacher, who's one of our practice advisors. Lori is so skilled and strong in helping people navigate these particular issues that I asked her to come back on. Now, Lori's been on a prior episode called I Love Conflict. So, Lori's coming at this from a different angle. So, as you listen to this episode, I'm going to encourage you to listen from the perspective how can you communicate more effectively to create positive client experiences, positive team experiences, and avoid destructive conflict. What are some of the common communication mistakes that we have in law firms that can create conflict? And of course, the practical things like how do you address somebody being late? How do you address quality control issues? How do you address feedback in the moment? And how do you address the slippery, ever evolving concept of setting expectations? With that, I hope you enjoy today's episode. So, with that, Lori, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's always an honor.
It's great to have you here. Your last episode, why I love conflict. I'm giggling because anyone who meets you would never see you as a person who seeks out conflict. You don't come across as, all the years I've known you, I think we're going on an 18-year relationship now. I've never seen you be conflict adverse, but I've never seen you being the type of person whose communication skills are so poor that you lead with conflict. You usually lead with grace, elegance, and thought. And so that's one of the things I love about you. And it's one of the reasons I'm inviting you back to the podcast because I can be really awkward. I can be very clumsy. I can say really stupid things in the moment. Now, none of the audience members probably make the same mistakes I do, maybe one or two, but I was hoping that you could come back and give us some tips, strategies, and approaches to help us all be better at avoiding conflict, but yet communicating in an effective way with our members when they let me say that again, with our team members, with our peers, with our bosses, when we miss expectations, their expectations are our expectations.
Yeah.
So I've got a big table set for you today. You up for it?
Let's do this. This is fun. And this is one of those topics that I really do love talking about, not because I naturally love conflict. And I think that's the important thing to recognize and acknowledge is that most of us are conflict adverse. It is not something that we look forward to. It's not anything that we want to engage in typically. And for a percentage of us, it is something that we will avoid on all costs. But what we're talking about today, Steve, is the context of law firm owners, partners, and even team members who have to work collaboratively and who need to be able to communicate effectively to ensure that objectives are met and client experiences are positive.
What are some quick tips that you can give me for navigating conflict in the moment?
All right. Well, you know me, Steve. Quick is never my strength, but I would say if I had to boil this all down, is this is a business skill that you have to refine, to learn, to work on, and it doesn't come naturally. So it requires your dedication and it requires you studying it, just like you would anything else. There are, some books out there that I think are really helpful on fierce conversations, crucial conversations, that can really help with you, again, understanding the dynamics that contribute to, to these conflict oriented situations and how you respond to them. And I think we have to recognize too, as I alluded in your example earlier, Steve, we have a script in our own heads about what conflict is and isn't, and what we can and can't say, and what we can and can't do, and what's going to be the result when we do that. We have to unbridle that a little bit and be more objective in these. And again, take on the responsibility of this is a leader quality, this is a managerial duty that has to be addressed. And then the other thing that's been really helpful for me is sometimes, again, you want to be timely in it, but it doesn't mean it has to be now because I'm a high I on the disc. I'm prone to emotion. I'm prone to people pleasing. And so I need to be able to formulate my approach. And I've had to have a lot of crucial conversations. For those conversations, I scripted it out. I ran through it in my head. Practiced how I was going to say it, how I was going to deliver it. And it made a world of difference in my ability to deliver effectively without delusion. If you really want to up level yourself as a leader, as a manager, and again, I can't overemphasize it enough that this is not a natural tendency or a natural skill that many of us have. So it has to come with the ability to carve out the time, recognize where you can improve, what hasn't gone well in the past, and what modifications you'd make. But some of this may also be your own self awareness around it, and some of us lack self awareness. And having conversations with your team, having conversations with your spouse, with your partners, with others who know you well, and identifying what your natural tendencies are is going to be a big help. We lean heavily into disc at Atticus here, Steve, and so that's a great tool for us. That might be something that you could leverage here, but knowing your tendency around conflict is going to be helpful to rewire yourself and how you're going to approach it in the future.
You can't learn if you don't self-reflect. That's probably the biggest challenge I think that a lot of people have, regardless of your role inside a firm, the ability to take a step back, reflect, and say, how am I doing with this particular skill? How am
Mhm.
I doing with this particular issue? So self reflection, taking a moment to think about it, even writing a plan to improve it is probably the critical go to thing that I can recommend. How about the work quality issue? So those are tardiness. Talk to me about work quality because that's something that makes me totally nuts.
And this is getting to be a greater issue that's coming up in more and more of the conversations I'm having with attorneys because, whether it's at an associate level or it's at a legal admin level, it's everything in between with, again, here's how I write, here's the expectations I have for grammar and accuracy and just quality of work product, and that's not being matched. And that is an issue. But we also have to, again, recognize that for better or for worse in some situations, the norms have adjusted and the emphasis that was formerly put on writing and communication in undergraduate studies just isn't as strong, in my opinion. And we're seeing more and more individuals. And I think the technologies that we're using, the shorthand of texting and other forms of communication that we're using are impacting this as well, as far as the knowledge and understanding of full sentence structures and grammatical rules. So I was working with an attorney, and she was extremely frustrated around the work quality coming for letters that were being drafted by her team. And so we kind of try to troubleshoot on this. And again, it goes back to what we've already said. It needs to be addressed. So we started with having her kind of redline it, but she can't do this every single time, right? Redlining everything. She might as well do it herself. And that's what we're trying to avoid. So let's redline it. Let's meet and let's talk about why these are errors or why I want to see the edits that I'm proposing here. And then give them another opportunity. In her situation, what we ended up doing was take your letter And then, so we're not removing their obligation or responsibility to draft that, but let's leverage AI here and let's have put that into AI and have AI do the redlining for them. But also, again, we can use it in a way where it doesn't just rewrite it or do the work for the employee, but actually demonstrates where and how certain changes should be applied to improve the readability, the consistency, the tone, the grammar, whatever it might be.